Hello and welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith. This is part 2 of the setup of Too Many Bones, and we've gone ahead and we've set up the majority of the game. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to go and talk about patches specifically because I hadn't completely finished everything I'd wanted to say about your character. So when you go ahead and you select your character, in this case I chose patches, and as you guys remember from the last video, most likely I chose him based on his solo difficulty being low. Now, because I'm learning, that makes sense. Some of you that have played the game before might jump right in with a heavier difficulty level gear lock. If that's the case, that's not a problem. Go for it. But if you're new to the game, it's recommended that you don't pick somebody that's too complex to start, or you'll get buried a little bit in the reference sheet for most of the game, and that's no fun. So what I found was, at least after playing a game or two of patches, was he was quick to pick up, and I didn't have to really do too much referencing, although I didn't really understand a lot of the dice, so I'm kind of lying. I had to do quite a bit of referencing, but I've now kind of grasped it, and hopefully from here on in I got a better shot of using him more efficiently. So essentially, when you pick your character, you're going to look for certain things on his reference sheet. So the first thing I'll mention, just one thing before we move to that reference sheet, is there are stars on this in this skills matrix area here. So essentially in this area, you've got yourself a 4x4 grid of 16 different unlockable skill dice. Now in this grid, you'll notice there's kind of like in most MMOs online or any type of Diablo-ish style games, you essentially have to unlock a certain skill with a star to start, and then from there you can branch based on where the arrows take you. If it has a star, then you can just go ahead and grab that particular skill. So that's where you can start. So it looks like Patches can go for med kit, he can go for nutrients, he can go for toxins, he can go for stem kit. Everything else has to be either gained during encounters or some game effect, or just by training. You get training points when you do. So let's take a look, for instance, at this first solo card. Here's, for instance, what a training point would look like. That's actually 2 training points. So if he got those 2 training points, he could say, you know what, I want the med kit. Well, if you want the med kit before when you're finished that encounter, you can put your die there and boom, you've now unlocked that particular ability on his character. And as I talked about before, if you want to go ahead and up any of these, that requires a training point. These are automatic successes. Health and dexterity are always automatic successes on upping the die count for that, for using a training point. But attack and defense, you have to roll, and you don't get rerolls except for defense. Attack, how it works is, if I was going to try to upgrade this attack, I would be taking 1 attack die plus 1 attack die, and I'd be rolling to try to not get any bones. And if I go ahead, let's say I rolled this, I didn't get any bones, boom. I would go ahead and take my 1, and my attack has now moved up. Now, if I wanted to, say I used my second training point, and I'm like, oh, I want to do defense now. Well, you don't take attack dice, you go ahead and you find defense dice. So you grab 2 defense dice, and you're obviously not looking for bones. I didn't get them. Now, let's just say, so technically as of right now, I would go, boom, I've got my extra defense up. But hypothetically, let's say that I actually rolled a bone and a defense. If I did that, you actually are allowed, this is the only of the 4 you're allowed to do this with. You're allowed 1 reroll in order to reroll your bones, essentially, on the defensive roll. So I can go like this, and I got a bone, that would be a fail. At this point, I couldn't take the defense training point. Now, it doesn't, like, the training point you use to try to up your defense does not go away. It doesn't disappear, it doesn't vaporize. You didn't fail completely. What you did fail in doing is upgrading the defense. But you are able to now try the attack. So you could go, oh, you know what? I actually meant, I really want to do the attack one. So how do you do that? Well, you got to do 1 plus 1 plus an extra 1. So now you're going to go ahead and go, okay, well, let's roll 3 attack dice and see whether or not we get it. We did. We got a 1, a 2, and a 1. Perfect. So that means we can tick this up. Now, you look at that, and some people are going to go, that is the dumbest move ever. Why is this dumb? Well, this is where it talks back to dexterity. What is dexterity about? Dexterity is about how many dice you can roll on your turn. Well, if you have 3 attack dice available to you when you're in the middle of a battle, only being able to roll 2 dice makes this really a stupid idea in terms of upgrading. So there is, basically you want to think about what you're doing before you go ahead and do it. You want to up your dexterity in order to ensure you get the most, you get the best combination of attack and defense dice. But I'll explain all that later. Health is always the guaranteed winner, because essentially all you're doing is you're raising your stack with health chips, keeping your character healthier and having a higher hit point value. It's never a bad idea. That's really the one you can't go wrong with. However, if you're only running around with 1 attack and 1 defense, and all you're doing is dumping all your training points into health, well, eventually when you start fighting the bigger guys, doesn't matter how much health you have, if you're not attacking them with much, they're going to start hammering you, and they're going to overwhelm you eventually. So there's a lot of strategy in these 4, enough to keep you busy, and there's a lot more interplay than even what I'm just explaining now. I will get into more depth of it when we're actually playing, so that it just makes more logical sense to explain it in real time versus now. So let's kind of jump past that, but essentially that's kind of a little bit of a talk about this, upgrading for training points, how the skills work. Active and locked dice. Active dice sit up here for the duration of your battle. So you might have an encounter that'll force a battle. If you have a battle and you roll a defense and attack dice, if you roll a defensive die and you get, say, a 1 on it, let's say, you're allowed to put it up in your active slot to sit there and basically defend against an attack from an enemy. That's what an active die does. If it's sitting up here, it also takes away from the total amount of dice you can roll when you're going to go ahead and roll for the next turn. So yes, it's good, but it also takes away from your die limit. So it's kind of like good and bad, depending on what you want. So locked dice, a little different. They carry over from encounter to encounter. So if you did an encounter and it forced a battle, and you had a die from here, that usually comes from something in here, I find. So say for instance you had like E-cells as a consumable. I think once you unlock this particular die, which is this right here, you roll it. And the reason I know that is because you can take a look at the reference chart, which is specific to Patch's dice, and look down to energy cells and it says L for lock. Control means you're using it like a counter. So essentially when you rolled it, I rolled it as a 3. So when it says to use it as to control it, it says right off the bat, like I just did, roll when acquired. So let's just say hypothetically I acquired this skill, yay. And then I rolled it, got the 3. So I'm done. I'm doing it correctly so far. It says reduce control by 1 to roll your Zap Pack, and Zap Pack's obviously a different ability in here somewhere, or to use Overcharge Backup Plan. Overcharge Backup Plan is just the most insane backup plan you can possibly store up and use on patches, which I'll get into once we get to the backup plan, but it's good. It's very good. If I hypothetically rolled this, as soon as I roll it, because that thing said L, you just take this die and you put it in the lock spot. Done. If it's in the lock spot, it doesn't count against your dexterity count of how many dice you can roll when you're battling. I'll explain that more when we actually play the game. What it does is it sits up here, and when you go ahead and choose to consume it during a fight, it'll either do one of those 2 actions that this particular chart references. It'll either do Zap Pack or Overcharge. You can see right here from the back of this card, Overcharge says reduce E-cell by 1 and electrify any baddie for 4 true damage. 4 true damage means it blows past any defenses he's got and hits him directly. It's a crazy strong ability, and you essentially would just go, yeah, I'm going to choose to use this. I'm going to tick this down to 2. It stays in your locked kind of bin, or I shouldn't say that. As soon as you tick it down, you use it, it becomes exhausted for the rest of that particular battle. But then you're allowed to bring that die back and put it into the locked bucket at the end of the battle, because locked dice, even when exhausted, are always there from fight to fight until this dice eventually, you use it enough, you tick it down to nothing, and then it's gone. Consumable, once it's gone. Unless the game can somehow bring it back to you. That's at least my understanding based on the rules I've read. So that's essentially that. And honestly, that'll make a lot more sense when I'm playing it in real time. So sorry for any confusion. I hope I'm connecting dots when I'm explaining that, because there's a lot to, you have to see the battle happening and then see me use that in real time to really understand it. So hopefully that, but at least it helps you understand these two differences. Active dice in here go against the dexterity that you can roll every single turn. So keep that in mind. Locked dice don't. Backup plan. How does the backup plan work? Well, if you had an attack of 1 and a defense of 1, when you roll on your turn right now, I could go, I can roll 2 dice, so I'll roll the 1 attack and 1 defense because I really don't have any other options, so I'll do that. So you go ahead and you'd essentially roll your dice. You'd roll your dice, and that's not bad. Let's see if I can get a bone here at some point. Come on, where's the bone? There we go. So we got a bone. Now what happens here is you got an attack, so yay, you do a hit off the baddie you're attacking. Then this bone essentially goes into the backup plan. What does that do? Well, it does nothing for Patches in the first slot, but as he continues to play the game and continues to go along, the more, now again, this backup plan here doesn't count against your dexterity. So you're not it's not like the next turn that comes around, oh shoot, I only have this counts against the 2, so I only have 1 die to roll. Oh, should I use attack? Should I use an attack die or defense die? Yikes. No, you can actually use 2 dice again, and you do the exact same thing. You'd be like, okay, well, I only have 2 dice to roll, so here we go. Attack again. Oh, look, another bone. And then you put your bone in the backup plan. What this is doing is it's basically giving you a way out when you're a failure. That's what a backup plan is all about. When things don't go your way, you just keep counting this backup plan up. And once you start taking into these particular ones with words on them, they start giving you the ability to expend all of them, or, whichever number you've reached. And you can go, I could have bones that go all the way up to, say, here, let's say I have 4 in here. And I can go, you know what, I just want to do needle jab. Well, then you've essentially gone ahead and you're going to burn 3 of them off. And then you move everything else all the way to the end of the track, right? So it's dynamic that way. But essentially you can choose what you want to do. And of course, everybody's backup plan and what they can do when they use those bones is totally different. So that's the crazy thing. Your reference sheet will become very handy, and it's also very useful for you to become very familiar with your reference sheet, because if you're not familiar with it, you'll be referencing it quite often, like I was at the very beginning, and I still do, because some of it's, you can't keep all of that stuff in your head, and it only takes a quick moment to just look at your sheet and go, oh yeah, 4 is that, okay, cool, sounds good, I'll use it. So that's essentially that. So we've covered all this now. Again, in terms of skill dice, if you're ever confused about any of these skill dice, use the numbers to pair to the numbers of the dice. If you're ever confused about a face on a die, because these dice are seriously different, every single one of them is different, you just look for the actual symbol and you go to Patches, his own reference sheet. It has a symbol beside every single one, right? There's only 1 of each one. Sounds like a lot, but they're only like usually a sentence each. So they're really not that bad. And to be honest, it's not like you start the game with 16 unlocked skill dice and you're just freaking out trying to figure out what they all are. You'll get 1, and you'll learn it, you'll use it, you'll try to figure out what the best way to use it is. You'll try to figure out how to combo it with different ones. It's very, very cool. And so that's that. Now, the other thing you need to do is make sure the Patches actually is ready for battle going into the first encounter, essentially, of the story. So Patches has a starting health of 5. So on your player area here, which is kind of like, this is your, and I forgot the word they use for this particular area of the mat. It's kind of like your prep area, I guess is what it's called. And you've got your player token here, and you go ahead and you grab, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now you might be wondering, oh, these don't look the same as the chips that are in the base game. They're not. These are the premium chips. They weigh more, and they weigh as much as the premium. So most of this stuff here is premium. All the chips that come in the game really are premium, except for the blood chips, or the wound chips, or health chips, whatever you want to call them. I went ahead and thought these were worthwhile. So now essentially Patches he just happens to have a red border on him, so he kind of blends in with his, but the other heroes are different colors. So you may be playing Boomer, you may be playing Tantrum, whoever you're playing, and stuff like that. It's obviously going to change the color up, but it keeps it dynamic. It's nice that way. But Patches is a medic, so I think red it made thematic sense. So then you keep him in your prep area ready to go with his initiative die, and he only comes out of that prep area when the battle initiates, if there even is a battle. So that's essentially it. The other thing you can do too when you're starting the game is you can sit there and go, well, what do I start with? You start with the ability to roll 2 dice like we talked about. I have the ability to roll 1 attack and 1 defense, and I can afford to do both of those because I have 2 decks. 2 decks allows me to roll 2 dice, and obviously the only 2 dice I have is attack and defense. I checked my reference sheet and I literally do not get anything on patches to start the game. I know it's weird, but you'll notice there's actually certain characters in the rulebook that show that they get starting dice. So patches, for instance, you see nothing in their starting area. Come over here to like Tantrum, he's got 2 dice he starts with, right? And you kind of wonder, well, why do these guys get dice in their pool? So Pickett doesn't, but you'll wonder, like, why does Boomer and why does Tantrum get dice in theirs? Well, what you're looking for is this symbol right here. If you get a skill with a circle around that kind of node, or that nut, essentially is what it is, then that means you get that particular skill. So you can see my chart for patches here. If I start going down it, I'm like, okay, please, is anything circled? There's all the nuts kind of sitting there. It's like, nope, no circles on anything. Too bad, nothing. So that's just the way it is. That's how you reference. That's how you determine when you start a game, do I have anything unlocked to start? Well, I don't. But I know I can roll an attack dice and defense dice and 2. So I might as well just take those 2 die, and I usually just put them in my tray just as a reminder that I have them and stuff like that. And of course, you can put as many attack dice and stuff in there as you want, but it's just a nice reminder of that's what I can roll essentially. So after that, we've got all the lane markers set up, which is good. Off camera, I'm going to fix the 5 points and 20 point baddies that I talked about in the previous video, because I did not filter those out yet, but I will be doing that. All the health chips are back there. There's a bunch of other dice that are involved in the game. So this one here is called the Round Tracker die. The Round Tracker die just essentially sits on the battle mat the entire game on the round 1 until a battle commences. When a battle commences, everyone gets a turn, baddies included. You would go, your friends would go, whatever. Once that round is over, you just tick it to round 2, and you just keep doing that as it counts up all the rounds. Once it gets to 5, this is your last safe, quote-unquote, safe round. Once you hit 6, you've entered Wound Central. Wound means you've exhausted yourself. You've been here battling so long, the game's getting tired of you and wants to progress things. So what this is really doing, it's kind of funny. What it's doing really is pushing you to end it quickly or strategically win. And what ends up happening is every single enemy or gear lock on the mat at the beginning of their turn will take a damage automatically. Cannot do anything about it. You're taking a damage. Now, sure, your healing and all that kind of stuff could buff you enough to make this not hit you as hard, but that's part of the strategy. It's like, okay, so you have to start thinking like, oh, when I get to round 5, and you know that blood round's coming up in round 6, if your baddies, you want to get your baddies to have a lower health than you going into that 6th round, so that, hey, maybe you can use that extra hit to your advantage to knock a few of them out or be the last one standing. It's very, very cool. I like it because it's like you get like 5 rounds to do whatever the heck you want in terms of battling, and then eventually it's like, okay, now it's no longer your turn to decide how things are going to pan out. Everyone's just going to start exhausting, getting tired, and losing health. And it speeds the game up too, because I'm sure the battles could go on much longer than they need to. This is a really good mechanic to just push people to resolve and to be strategic in their moves, and I really like that. So that's essentially the setup. There really isn't too much more to start, to be honest. Really, at this point right now in the video, I could flip over the first encounter. I wouldn't flip over, but I just take the first encounter. As you remember, guys, when you're playing solo, you've got the 3 cards. Now, I am not playing co-op, so co-op may have just a little bit of a variation in how you set up the deck. I'm not going to go over that here. Please read the rules for that if you're playing with friends, but there's a difference in how you set up the encounter deck. It's not major, but really, you're playing with, when I'm playing with 1 gear lock, you're using solo cards. At some point, if I ever choose to play 2 gear locks, which I might, then I'll start using the general encounter cards instead of the solo ones, right? And we talked about that in the last video if you were watching. So I think that pretty much covers everything. So again, if you come back here to Patch's card, he's got his backup plan to the top left. You got your beginner build and strat. So it even tells you, like for stats, a dex and another attack die are your first priorities. So really what it's doing is for people that are unfamiliar with the game, it's saying, hey, when you get some training points, you should go after dexterity, you should go after attack. That will help patches out more so than anything else. And then it, gives you other little hints about skills. It says, hey, get the med kit first, then get the nutrients, and then after that, maybe go for the toxins and all this kind of stuff. So what it's doing is it's pointing you to skills, and it's saying these are the ones you should be trying to go for. This is the beginner build. Obviously, once you get past the beginner stage, you just start ignoring that section and doing what you want. What does innate mean? Well, innate essentially is just the back and front of the main chip. So there is a difference though. So when you start the game, you start kind of at innate level, which is just whatever it says here. So I get recovery. So you can just do a quick little check, and it'll even say on your reference sheet, my innate is at the start of your turn, heal yourself for 1. So Patches being a medic, thematically it makes sense. He heals himself by 1 every single time he starts a turn. Cool. I get that without doing anything. I'll always have that. That's amazing. If I get enough bones to fill my entire backup plan, I can use, when I get to the 6th one, you can see right there, once you get your 6th bone, which would be a bone that's actually out of a slot, you can upgrade immediately to initiate 1. When that happens, you flip this chip over, and now you've become kind of a starred person, I guess a starred character of yourself. You're a little bit more powerful, like the All-Star, and you basically go to a higher innate level, sorry. So now you get the innate, plus 1 major recovery, and it says instantly and permanently increase the health stat die by 1. Once per adventure. At the start of your turn, heal any gear lock for 1 HP. So that's crazy. So now you've got the ability to like start pinpointing any gear lock on the battle mat when you fight to actually heal guys instead of just yourself, which is crazy. So it's really, again, it's something to think about. Hey, shoot, do I need to heal myself, do a needle jab, do a fortunate discovery, do an overcharge? Can you hold all of those bones in there and hold off using them in order to get to that innate plus 1? I can tell you right now, it's very tough. When you start seeing what you can do with these too many bones, as they say, it gets very, you start to become very greedy, and it's tougher than you think to hold off in certain situations when you're fighting and you realize you're in trouble and you need to start using those bones. So anyway, just to kind of explain that for you, that's essentially that. What else is on this sheet? We already talked about this, but essentially this whole front page is all dice reference. So you just read it and reference it when needed. You don't really need to memorize it. The coolest part of the game is it does come with a reference sheet, which is really important. And this one just talks about baddie skills and encounter terms. So it gives you a quick reference for all the major terms that are going to pop up on a particular baddie chip. So, I'll take one of the guys that's not in play. But this guy, for instance, he has a Rage 1. So you're going like, what the heck is a Rage 1? Well, you just go take a quick look at here, and it says, if the unit is not at full HP, it gains the number of additional attack dice. So that means he's so mad, he's going to gain 1 extra attack dice. So that means he's going to gain 2. So if that particular effect is in play. So that's essentially it. It's actually really quick to reference. I found it really easy. Didn't have any issues with it at all. So that's essentially it for the setup. So this is good enough to kind of get going into the very, very first adventure. So I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited. If you are, give me a like in the comments, and we're going to jump into the world of Daelor. Daelor, I hope I'm pronouncing that correct, or I'm butchering it. Patches is going to go in. We're going to do this first with him, see how he does, and who knows? Maybe we'll find some great loot. Maybe we'll find some crazy bad guys, which I will be filtering these ones out because they're not correct. And I hope this gives you a good overview of how to set up Too Many Bones. Until next time, guys, keep on rolling solo.